Well, this is such an exciting evening. I'm trusting that you got it all excited about mapping the world while I was looking for the right button to press. You know, some things get us on our toes, and tonight certainly is one of those. So welcome to the weekly map show, Wednesday evenings, 7 p.m. And it's just so exciting to have you join us this evening. Or if you're watching the recording, we really look forward to hearing your comments and to share some of your insights on a topic like the very one that we're going to be speaking this evening. I advertised it as a finish strong topic, but the better or more appropriate title is finishing well. And no one better than Peter Darroll to talk to us about this topic. And of course, we are having our 71st map show tonight, and Peter is just 6 steps ahead, as he has just recently celebrated 77 years of influence and going strong. And we certainly look forward to a great number of years ahead. We're actually planning for this morning. He was talking about planning the next 100 years. And Peter, that is an incredible outlook to have. And we all need to be looking way beyond our lifetime and think about a lifeline. And so finishing well is such an appropriate topic for people who are mapping their lives. Just earlier today, I was chatting to somebody from a small town or small village in the in the country of South Africa. And he was talking about this very concept of lifeline. And I trust that tonight, as you begin to think about mapping your future, that you listen carefully to the words that Peter has to share with us. Peter has spoken on a few occasions, when I say a few, many occasions here on the map show, so he doesn't need any introduction to those of you who are regular. But for those who are watching this video for the very first time, Peter is actually one of the very first, if not the first person ever to open and use Map for Life. Way back in the day when it was called My History in the Making. And of course, Peter, over the last 23, going on 24 years, has certainly made history with his life and continues to do so. So after this short little introduction to Peter, please take some notes, share your insights. We'd love to discuss it during the panel, and Heather and Delani, Heather from London and Delani from Johannesburg, South Africa, will be joining me as we share some of the insights that we've got and ask one another some questions on Peter's talk. Have a wonderful evening. We'll chat to you again shortly.
Good evening, everybody. Wonderful to be with you. Now, when we started off talking about tonight's show, and in fact, I was inspired by a clip that appeared on the Map for Life site by Dr. Miles Monroe. And we spoke about the question of finishing strong or finishing well. And we debated which term to use. But one of the things that came through as an ardent road runner, it was a case of I, as a runner, would like to finish strong. And if I finished strong, it meant that I finished well. And it was quite interesting just reflecting on it. And as I was just waiting to come onto the show, I started to think about other areas of my life, not just from a running point of view, and could bring in a whole lot of examples. But just for the purposes of this, and from a personal point of view, I will just have one little running story. And it was a case of one of my very good friends, and he was getting ready for comrades, and he really felt that he had trained well and that he was going to have a very good run. Now, when it comes to road running, the actuaries have sat down and they've worked out what you need to do for different distances. Now, if you look at a map for running, you'll actually see the table there. But just to give you some example, that if you want to run a silver medal at the Comrades Marathon, which is 90 kilometers, and you've got to break 7.5 hours. But to do that, you would have to be able to run a marathon, 42.2 Ks, in 2 hours and 54 minutes, run a half marathon in 1 hour, 23 minutes, a 10K in 37 minutes, and then 5Ks in 17 minutes, 49 seconds. My mate was feeling that if everything went well, and according to his training, he was going to wind up running close to 7 hours. We were chatting, and it was a case of to encourage him. I said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll buy you a beer for every minute that you run under 8 hours. And he said, but I'm going to run sub 7.5. And I said, well, no, I'm just giving you something to aim for, so that if you're going to miss that, you could still win the bet. I said, but for every minute that you over 8 hours, you're going to have to buy me a beer. And off he went. He got to halfway in 3.5 hours, so he was on schedule to finish in his 7 hours. And suddenly, as they say, the wheels fell off. And he limped home in 8 hours, 43 minutes. And he had to buy me 43 beers. And that was just a good example of what happens, how we start out strong, but sometimes it doesn't quite work that way. And as we look around life, but we look at in different areas. We think from a sporting point of view, we think of the Diego Maradonas and how he went from a superstar to a real villain of soccer. I think from a South African point of view, in the tragic story of our own Hansie Cronje, who many regarded as one of the greatest captains South Africa has ever known, and an incredible sportsman, and how he got caught up in the web of evil and finished up as in disgrace. But we also look in other areas, and I think of the TV evangelists and the like, and how so many of them have fallen down. Prominent business people haven't escaped. And again, here in South Africa, I think of the Steinhoff case and how we're reading right now that Marius Jooste is being sequestrated and so on. And it's interesting to look at the Bible and see what happens there. And I'm told that there are something like 100 biographical examples in the Bible. And of those cases, only 30 to 35 of the people finished strong or well. And it's interesting when you look at them, and it's a case of how they finished up. And some of them came in running. And when I think of coming in running, I think of Abraham and Joshua. Some of them came in walking. And I'm sort of putting David because of what happened to him. I talk of Hezekiah as another one who walked home. And then there were those who limped home. Examples such as Gideon and Solomon was another one who limped home. And then there were those, and the term that was used was that they were disqualified. And we think of Samson and Absalom. So they're different examples. And I think the classic Bible story on this is the story about King Rehoboam, who was the son of Solomon, the grandson of King David, and how he just collapsed. And one can read about his story in 1 Kings chapter 12. But it was a case of how he mishandled his father's legacy. He abandoned the wise counsel that his father had set up for him. And then he reflected on peer standards. And I look at it, and I look at that story, and it's quite amazing as you look at so many of the biblical stories and compare to what's happening in the world today. And we can see examples just of King Rehoboam and happening in life today. I think of family businesses and how so few family businesses go on to last for 3 generations because of these things. I was just looking at this week's Map for Life gem, and we were talking about it this morning, and I said one I liked was where it said, the older you are, the more valuable you become. But in reality, in these days, that's not quite the case. And folk are trying to push people away. And it's just one of those things that we see happening all the time. When I look at folk who haven't finished well, what has been the reasoning behind it? I think the number one issue is a question of pride and how they've let pride interfere with what's going on. We see a case of the misuse of money. We see abuse of power. We see family dissension. And we see complacency. And we see it all around us. I looked at a list of the secrets to finishing strong or finishing well. And it's not to allow pride to get into the front. And I think it's key to remember that you were created for a purpose that the world cannot do without. And I add to that, you need to stay close to your Creator so that you know that you were there for a purpose. I also say, don't get caught up in the why me. And sometimes this why me creates a problem. Change the question to why not me? I think it's important that we stay teachable, that we stay connected. And we need to cultivate friends who will challenge us and hold us accountable. I think it's important that we discipline and mentor others. And at the same time, we have people who are disciplining and mentoring us. I think what is equally and maybe more important is to keep an eternal perception of all of these things. I looked at some of the things that have happened and why folk have fallen down. And I just got down to number one is the loss of passion. And that flame that ignites them just goes out. Maybe they become a little resentful about those who've betrayed them or hurt them. They become cynical and critical. But they also are inclined to become isolated. They've got nobody holding them accountable. On one of the books I looked at, it spoke about hidden sins. I prefer just to talk about bad habits. And some of those habits might not even be regarded as sins in the general course of the word, but that type of thing. Just one of the things that we see happening is people start thinking about having an affair because the domestic situation is not what it used to be. The light's gone out of, the romance has gone out of it. and that they start looking at those. I also think they get tired of the fight and they lose the stomach of the fight. And then I think an important one, and it's important that we keep the faith and that we believe that the impossible is possible. You know, I've always said that I'm passionate about Map for Life. Map for Life changed my life. And I just believe that the methodology helps us to address some of these issues that I've touched on tonight. But I think the key thing is that connecting with a map club or a map cafe is a place where there's a serious level of accountability. And I think that's critical. But I also think it's a place where one can go regularly and rekindle the fire and get the passion mounted up. We're just talking today, and we lost one of the giants of the South African world, a chap by the name of Graham Power. And Graham Power did a lot of amazing things. He had a construction company. We were talking about it. And in his construction company, he had a written vision for 100 years. I say, what sort of vision have you got? And what have you written down? Do you have a 100-year vision? I think of another example that I put down as I was thinking about tonight, and that was Queen Elizabeth. And how she kept the faith. And literally a couple of days before she died, there she was, appointing her 16th Prime Minister. What a wonderful example. Last week on Map for Life, Glenn posted a clip by Dr. Miles Monroe where he spoke about Die Empty. And I'm just saying, guys, if you haven't listened to that or watched it, do yourself a favor and go and look to it. It really is an inspiring clip. And so I just urge you to finish strong, to finish well, and to die empty. And I'd like to hear each one of you reach the end and be able to say, like St. Paul did, I fought the good fight, I finished the race, and I've kept the faith. Thank you, people.
Peter, thank you so much for sharing those words of wisdom with us this evening. And I can fully agree with you that age, they say that wisdom comes with age, but for many people, age comes all on its own. And we need to remedy that. We need to change that. We need to give people the opportunity to start thinking beyond retirement. I think so many people have swallowed that idea hook, line, and sinker, and they begin to look forward to this young age of 65 to reach the end, when in actual fact, that is, for me, the beginning of wisdom. The beginning of wisdom is realizing that life doesn't need to end at 65. In fact, it should go way beyond our lifetime. And so tonight, I'm really encouraged by what you shared with us. And I know that Heather and Delani, who are going to be joining me right now, that they have a whole bunch of exciting things that they too have picked up this evening. So Heather, Delani, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I must maybe just for a moment show the people where we're from, just in case they don't know. And of course, you'll see that although Delani and I are not sitting next to each other, we have somebody all the way from London in between, the rose between the thorns, as they say. Heather, welcome. And I trust that you've enjoyed Peter's session. But before we get into what Peter had to share with us, maybe just quickly introduce yourself, how you got to hear about Map for Life.
Hi, Glenn, and hi, everybody. Hi, Delani. Nice to be on. Never mind where I'm from, but I was most fascinated by the talk this evening. It just reminded me of the importance and the significance of Map for Life. And yes, my brother mentioned it to me many, many years ago. She gave me a piece of paper, but I actually picked up a copy in Bikini Beach Books in Gordons Bay, an old copy, and it had a free gift in there. And I thought it's brand new. Nobody's used it. I'll use the free gift so many years later. And that's how I got in touch with Glenn. And I've never turned back. Once I opened the book, I knew that I had to fulfill my dreams.
You know, Heather, I'm excited about your location on the planet. You know, you are at the heartbeat of the world. You're at the center of everything. So I can see that many, many lives are going to be touched and transformed through your engagement with MAP. And I can imagine that already. And Delani, you've just arrived back from Zambia and going to share things with leadership and so on in Zambia. Why don't you just quickly tell us your story? How did you get to hear about Map for Life, and maybe touch on Zambia, and we can then get started on Peter's engagement.
Thank you very much, Glenn. A friend of mine whom you know, his name is Glenn, and
a different one.
A different one. At one time, he was part of my coaching team, and we were talking about schools. And then he introduced me to Map for Life. And as I looked at Map for Life, I realized that we share the same vision. We have the same tools and roadmaps we have in mind. But what I liked about Map for Life was the packaging of what becomes, in my view, the toolbox of walking alongside and planning your life. And that's what kept me very interested and also involved in Map for Life. What happened about a week ago, as Glenn was asking me to talk about Zambia, I was talking to more than 500 people who are members of the Zambian Institute of Chartered Accountants. I've been speaking to them for more than 5 years, and they keep calling me back. And this time, they wanted me to open the conference. They also wanted me to address them on the subject of leadership and response to pandemics. Luckily, I carried along my Map for Life material, and I made sure that they get as much as possible. So we will soon getting a lot of responses from Zambia. And that is the story of what last week happened. But I'm very excited about the introduction of finishing your life or your journey stronger, and the relationship that has been mapped in relationship to a marathon. So I would be very interested to tease and ask some questions, but also to share some insights. Thank you.
Well, I think that's going to be great, and Delani, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to seeing those people from Zambia connecting with us, and I never knew that we could have a master accounting plan, but maybe you've just introduced it. Peter started with this great story of well, I'm not so sure about the reward. the reward that he offered his friend, I think, or for himself, Peter. But it was an interesting thought that he sort of conjured up in my mind, and then those words, which I put on the screen there. You know, start strong, but. And I was wondering this evening, if Heather, you've got something to share around that idea where, you know, people kind of tend to go. I was going to use the word hell for leather, but I can't, I feel I shouldn't be using that. You know, they shoot out the starting blocks, and they look like it's all glitz and glamour, and things are going to be radically changed, and things are going to happen, and then life seems to take away the energy. Do you want to chat about that, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you get an idea and you get excited and you start. You don't plan. And that's how you are easily swayed along the way. Because if you have your vision and you have your goal and you plan it out and you look at what could go wrong and how you can work with what goes wrong, how you can cope, how you can solve the problems that are going to arise, you are better prepared to finish and finish strong. You start something sometimes and then you've got all the people on the outside, the gallery, and everybody's chipping into your ear. And sometimes the people you are listening to have no idea about the goal you are trying to reach. They've never done it. They don't know how you're going to get there. They don't know the people that are involved. But you find yourself listening to people's voices when they don't even count. And sometimes you get discouraged. Sometimes you need that second wind. And the most important thing about finishing well, as Peter said, is to keep on going back to the fire, keep on rekindling the flame, be around the people that are going to get you there. But you know what? Life does happen. So you've got to be prepared as well.
I like that idea of keep going back to the fire. You know, that's actually, I remember going to someone's office when I was still working as an engineer. Well, I'm still an engineer, by the way, for those of you who don't know. I'm a life engineer, but I used to be a civil engineer. And when I went up to his office, and on his office door was a black and white printout of a few words, and it simply read, "The main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing." And what you're saying here now is a reminder, and for those people who are tuned in this evening, is the importance of having vision, because vision is actually your visitation of the future. When you have a vision, you've actually literally been to the future, you've experienced it, you've seen it, no one else has. And so we shouldn't allow other voices of distraction or destruction just keep us from, or destroy the vision that we've seen, because we've been and experienced it. Thanks, Heather, for sharing that. Delani, if you want to continue on the same thought, or maybe you said that you had some of your own insights as Peter was sharing, but this concept of starting. Mm-hmm.
For me, as Peter was sharing, there are a few things that came up. One was the idea of the discipline of the mind, which is important as you run a marathon, as you pay attention to your end in mind. There is a need for your mental strength to be focused to the cutting point. So that is the first thing that came to me. And the second one, Peter was explaining that as you run the marathon, you also have people who give you water, who stand around the road and who support you, which comes to me as a need to create a team that mentors, that encourages, that inspires. It could be people that are not visible. It could be people that will be visible. It could be people that live in your memory of your vision, but that inspire you. The other thing that was very fascinating was what I call the milestones on the road. Peter was very clear that when you run a marathon, you need to know about 42 Ks and this and that. Those what I would call milestones, bits and bits of achievements that you need to keep into your mind that gives you the 90-kilometer run. So it's not just a 90 kilometer, it's about understanding your territory, understanding how you pace yourself, but also understanding what support is required. And I would be very keen for Peter just to comment on those matters. But that's what I picked up. That's what excites me about finishing strong.
Yeah, as you were talking, I was suddenly taken back to Peter's comment about running 5 kilometers in 17 minutes, and I realized that when he said that, I think I'd have to double my current walking speed to be able to reach those sort of targets. But when you realize it's just double your walking speed, it doesn't sound so far-fetched. So maybe I could walk that comrades in 16 hours or something like that. Perhaps it'll be an interesting exercise. But you've just reinforced and I think what Peter was doing there as well, Heather, is actually reinforcing the steps in the map process about maybe you're going to talk about that. I think, Delaney, you also referred to, in a sense, the support structures. It's not just the methodology, but it's also that support that's so necessary and important in our journey. Heather?
Yeah, it's nice that we're speaking about marathons, but if somebody's listening to this thinking, I'm never going to run a marathon. This is so far. You're looking at something that's I can't finish well with the distance being so great. But the concept is the same, whether it's 5 kilometers, whether you just want to get the children ready on time in the morning, whether you just want to cook a decent meal. It's the same process for whatever you're doing. Know where you are, know where you want to go, and know how you're going to get there. I'm not a runner. And because of Liesel, one of our great mappers, I was encouraged to run a 5K. And I thought that I could do it. I thought I could do this easy. But in your mind, sometimes what you want to achieve is not the same as in reality. And you start on that start line and you're ready to go. And I thought, gosh, 5K is far, man. And halfway, I wanted to lie down and just give up. But that support from the other people, yes, you can do it. And I'm saying, go on ahead, leave me. I thought, well, if everybody leaves me, I'll just stay behind you and walk the rest of the way. But having those people encouraging you, and that's why you need to be part of a map cafe, as Peter says, because that's what we do for you. We encourage you. You tune into our gems, their encouragement. You watch the YouTube recordings. That's encouragement. So it's fantastic that we've got this concept from Peter, but in everything you do, finish strong and finish well. Everything, not just your whole life. Because when you do those little things every day, well, and do them well and finish well, they add up to the greater things, and it prepares you for that life journey.
Yeah, as you were sharing, there's so many little gems that come out, and I'm aware of how few people cross the finish line, but at the same time, how many people give up along the way. And while I was thinking that, and you were talking about the 5 kilometer race, I began to realize the importance of preparation. And when you run the first 5K, the one thing that's clear is you learn something. and so the next 5K that you do, you're better prepared and you learn something more. And so I think life is like that. We want to attempt great things at first. We want to impress people by how we start. But as we grow through life, I say grow through life, as we grow through life, we get to a place where we begin to realize that actually what's important is the finishing part. The start is, yes, people say the first step is the most difficult, but when you start thinking about this finishing, I think that people are missing the essence of life. They're chasing after little things, but not keeping what Peter was talking about, the eternal things in mind. Delani, maybe you heard Peter refer to that as well as he was talking. How did that grab you?
I think to me, Peter rekindled some small but very important elements of life and of understanding that the finishing itself happens when you have run your race. And the finishing is the steps at the end, which may be few meters, but the most toughest, because at that time, your body and your mind are not in sync. And as Heather was saying, I'm giving up. I'm tired. Why am I punishing myself? But the finishing requires all that I have, my mind, my body, my soul, and my physical strength working together to carry my whole being to the cutoff point. And that is unfortunately where, including myself, where sometimes I give up when I'm almost done. And I'm almost collecting a certificate and I say, I can't. And that is the toughest point in life, but it is a point of possibility, which Map for Life, in the manner in which it provides support of the package it has, the videos that are available, the life stories of people who have walked on the journey. Those are the last point of getting water to the finishing point. And that is exciting.
You're talking. I'm just thinking for a moment, Heather, your mother, joining us every Wednesday evening and tuning in, and I trust that she's there because in my mind I imagine her supporting us every Wednesday evening, and for me that just, it's such a different picture from when you go to the old age home. I mean, I can't imagine seeing Delani ever going into an old age home and waiting for somebody to serve him breakfast in the morning, and all he can talk about is the latest news on the television. I mean, I can't see that. I can't imagine that future for anybody who's engaged with MAP, because the future has to be exciting. Elon Musk talks about having a future that wakes you up in the morning. There needs to be something to look forward to. And I think this becomes even more important as our physical bodies start aging. I was saying to Peter this morning that I think he actually looks younger. He's looking younger and younger as he goes along. And I think when you have a vision that excites you, it literally impacts your physical outlook. I mean, not only your outlook, but your physical body changes. Because, man, when you connected with purpose, passion comes along for the ride. And when the passion is there, the fire is there. When the fire is there, we can get going. I'm going to bring Colton in a moment from Cape Town. He's going to be joining us as well. I'm sure he's been listening to Peter's talk. Heather, what if you were talking? I made some notes as you were talking this evening. There was something that came up from what Peter said, and maybe we've talked a bit about this. I'm just going to put it up for now. We can maybe talk about it in a moment, but I thought this was a very powerful comment about wise counsel. I'm not too sure if he elaborated on it. I think he just mentioned it. But I found that maybe we need to actually park that somewhere in the back of our mind. When we're journeying through life, wise counsel is something of value. But then there was this statement: stay in the fight, keep the faith. And I thought that is a very powerful comment. Do you want to talk to that as I bring our friend from Cape Town in?
I think it's very good when you know where you want to go. Because when you know where you're going and you keep working at it, regardless of the distractions, as you say, regardless of how you're feeling, when you train a child in the right way, they keep on doing it for the rest of their lives. But if you don't train them, they don't know that they've got to do it. So it becomes subconscious. So if you know that you're still going to get up in the morning, whether you want to or you don't want to, but you've made a commitment and you're sticking to that commitment because you're focused on the end result, to me, that is staying in the fight and keeping the faith, because you know what's going to happen at the end. But I think more so with Peter was the vision, keeping that vision. And the fact that he was talking about a vision of 100 years, that keeps you going, because what you're leaving, you've planned that other people are going to take that baton and carry on with it. Baton, as the Americans say. They're going to take that baton and run with it after you have finished well and finished strong.
Heather, thanks for sharing that. Colton, welcome. I wanted to ask if you were able to tune in to Peter's talk that he gave earlier, and if there's maybe an insight that you'd like to share from what you've heard. I know you've been listening into our conversation, so perhaps you've got an insight that you'd like to share. If you can just for the next minute give us a quick insight from Cape Town.
Yeah, well, I just rushed here to be. Greetings to all. I just rushed to be here now, so unfortunately, didn't have the opportunity now to listen to Peter's talk. But it's just amazingly this morning, my mom, she was up at 6 o'clock this morning, and I had to just take her to the shops and so forth. And while we had some coffee there, I told her, I said, Mom, 6 o'clock, you were up this morning already. I just about battled to wake up at around about 8, 9 o'clock. And it took me about an hour or so to even get done and so forth and so forth. So I said, what really motivates you to be able to, at your age, you'll be 88 in January now, and you seem to have more energy and more vigor than your siblings? And a simple answer is, I just thank God for another day to grant me another day of opportunities that can either be a challenge or alternatively can just be a privilege and a pleasure to live through. And I thought, gee, it was so simple. So simple. And therefore, I was busy with a talk on intention. This is something I would like to share to the group once upon a time. But intentional living. And what an eye-opening experience it was for me to have firstly listened in slightly a bit about intentional living, and then from there to be able to prepare something and spoken about it. And it was actually an eye-opening experience for me. And the bottom line, coming back to my dear old dad again, he always used to say, relating to what you guys are talking now about the running and so forth and so forth, he always used to indicate that you will achieve whatever you intend achieving if your heart and soul is actually into exactly what you wanted to achieve. So it's easily just to want to, for argument's sake, participate on a cycle run or a jogging run or something like that. But if that isn't really the thing that motivates you, then obviously it will be quite a schlep. So the bottom line is, according to my dad always was, make 100% sure what you actually want to do and achieve. And then from there, you will amazingly just find the strength and the motivation and the vigor to be able to get you there.
Colton, you've just this morning. There there was a quote that I shared at our Map Cafe, and just a note here from Quentin Davis in Cape Town. He spotted somebody from Cape Town and immediately popped a comment on our on our feed saying, "When is the Map Cafe starting in Cape Town?" So, Quentin, the Map Cafe is starting in Cape Town. I said to Peter this morning, we're going to start a Map Cafe in Cape Town. It's going to begin. So we already have the people. So on a day in the next week, the week that's coming, will be the first Map Cafe in Cape Town. And I invite anybody who's watching to join us. You can go to the Map Club and find out some more information a little bit later on. But, you brought something up important. Let me just put this quote up, which I was sharing this morning. And it says simply, it was this: head heavy versus heartfelt. And you were talking about that concept of intentional living. You've got to have your heart and soul in it. And I think too often people's head is in something. It makes sense. It has all the calculations pan out. It's going to be profitable. It's going to make you look great, and it's going to be all these good things. And then suddenly one day you're lying in your coffin. And there's people at the funeral, and they don't talk about what you were chasing. They talk about something different. They talk about how you touched them in terms of their life. Right. Heather, what are your thoughts on that? This concept of I mean, we were talking about finishing well. So at the end of the day, we're actually saying, when your eulogy is being read, when people gather together and have a cup of tea after the pastor's finished talking at your funeral, what is it that they say? Is it going to represent someone who has finished well, or someone who's just finished?
The great thing about funerals is that everybody looks at the positive. Very few people are going to stand up there and say, she did this. That is what's great about funerals. But nobody's going to talk about your achievements, your certificates, your nice car you had in the drive. People are going to talk about how many people you gave a lift to, how many people you stopped and helped. Not how much money you've got in the bank, but how much you gave. So it's a different concept altogether. But the thing about finishing well is whether your heart and soul is in it. Once you've started, you must finish.
It's so easy to give up, isn't it? I find with when we have our gatherings and we meet up with different people, it's fascinating how easily people are distracted by the next good idea, or the next fashion trend, or the next big thing. I'm just, as I'm saying that word, the next big thing, I've heard that so many times. And that just demonstrates the ease at which you are distracted from that which you are pursuing is maybe a demonstration of the level to which your heart and soul is engaged in your passion. Delani, what are your comments on that?
What keep bouncing back in my mind as we speak, and I'm reflecting on staying in the fight, which is what Peter referred to, comes a concept of being present. Because if you are in a ring and you are fighting, you can't fight when you are not in the ring. You need to be in the ring and fight the fight. So the excitement of mapping life is ensuring that I am present, fully present, being impactful, being recognized, seen, and adding value to those that I love most. So the concept of being present takes me to fire in me, not the fire outside of me, It is the fire that is within me that drives my energy of presence.
You're reminding me of a Zulu proverb that somebody once mentioned. I don't know if it was Johnny Clegg. No, it wasn't. It was Les Brown. Les Brown he actually talked about he didn't talk about a Zulu proverb, my apologies. He talked about an old African proverb. And he says, when you've got a fire within, the fire outside can do you no harm. And I was listening to somebody speak at a church recently, and he said, when you got the fire of the Holy Spirit inside of you, the fire of sexual passion can't do you any harm. And I just thought that is an amazing sort of concept. And so thanks for bringing that. In fact, we talked a bit about it this morning. We talked about I'm surrounded in this part of the country. Or rather, I attend a business meeting on Friday mornings, and there's a question in fact, there's 4 questions that they ask every new person to tell the group when they introduce themselves. And one of them is, what do you drive? And that question, if turned around like you have just stated now, Delani, instead of asking people what do you drive, or being interested in what they drive, or looking out the window to see what car they arrived in, what if we changed that and said, what drives you? What inspires you? What invigorates you? What makes you feel like you are alive? I think those are important questions. And Carlton, you were touching on that with your mom this morning. I mean, I think there does come a time when you decide to get up early, and there also comes a time in your life when your body decides it's time to get up early. So sometimes we don't have a choice. But what are your thoughts on this idea of being present and really just maybe just taking the intentional living that you're talking about a step further?
Well, you asked a question now about this thing, what car do you drive, what drives you, etc., etc. I remember on one occasion, after a very, very auspicious function that we attended, that question was posed, and I answered, well, I came here by Uber. You won't believe. They just couldn't, the expression on certain people's faces. It's almost as if they couldn't think of something else to say after that. And I realized how expectant people are to somehow get responses or answers or whatever of what they assume life is all about. And when something comes out of the blue that they did not expect, it's like a curveball that hits them. And more often than none, I will indicate to students and young people and stuff all around how important it is, as I always allude to at any time. Forget about what you own and what possessions you have and intend going for. Find yourself first, and you will understand, as you correctly just alluded to now, you will find that none of these external things will bother you because the fire is within you. And when I mention examples of guys that are willing to get up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, have to make a fire so they can heat up water to be able to give them a wash, and then obviously make a cup of coffee or something. They're into a taxi to be able to meet a train at 6:37 o'clock to be at their work environment at 7:30, etc., etc. And they are the ones that are whistling and singing and humming while they are sweeping the floor and picking up dirt, as opposed to some of the bosses that comes in that got up the morning, very nicely showered, breakfast on the bed, car started up nice and warm with air conditioning, comes into the office sulkingly, and you have to trample on eggs if you even intend wanting to bring something to his attention. And it's times like this that you need to wonder, what is life really all about? And as you alluded to that, Glenn, once the fire is in you, it's amazing how some of these external things doesn't affect you.
Sure.
But once you are reliant and dependent on the fire outside of you and around you and not within you, that is when it becomes a turmoil in your life.
I was just
And
thinking,
that's
as
why
you
many
say
young
that, you know,
people, and that's why many young people, when they speak, when we talk about, what's your future and what you consider for your future, and when the question comes on what you guys feel is success, and when they come to this thing of millions in the bank and double-story homes and 3 German vehicles and 4 girlfriends and so forth, one question I ask him, now what makes a millionaire commit suicide? And you won't believe the frowns and the disappointments on their faces, because it comes back to make 100% sure what you are asking for is what you really need. Because most important, God grants you what you need. It's your wants that cripples you.
Colton, you've reminded or cautioned me on something, and that is that there are some people who are fire extinguishers, and others that are fire igniters, and maybe this evening we should be focused on being fire starters and really ignite the fire in others. So in just 15 seconds each, can you each share one closing thought? Heather?
I'll just repeat what Peter said. Finish strong, finish well, die empty.
Love it. And by the way, you just reminded me about something. Let me just quickly pop this up here while Delani shares his 15 seconds. Oops, that's the wrong one. There we go. This is the right one. So if you want to go and just look that up. And Heather, can you see my spelling error there? I think it's always important to spell things correctly if you want to give people a place to find the story that Peter was talking about. Okay, so mapforlife.com/Miles Monroe, and you can go and watch the video that Peter referred to. Sorry, Delani.
Thank you, Glenn. What comes to me is that I need to love myself and invest in me. I need to ensure that I serve and live abundantly. And living abundantly means I download everything I have and I die peacefully.
Amen. Colton?
Don't take life too seriously. Life is a privilege and should be pleasurable. So don't put unnecessary loads and struggles on your life. But what is very important, once God is in control and you believe that He is in charge, He will never ever put a challenge ahead of you that He knows you won't be able to combat or defeat.
Guys, this has been a wonderful session. I just want to say thank you to each of you for participating. And Peter, what a great session. I think you've started something. You just enabled us or got our focus back to what's really important, and that we keep our eye on that end goal and not be disappointed by short-term failures. Let's keep the main thing, the main thing, the main thing, the main thing. Because if we do that, we can start moving steadily towards the things that we are really and truly passionate about. Guys, thank you so much. We're just going to end with a short little video clip. I trust that you'll enjoy that. Please, to the panel, stay in. Peter would like to chat to us and maybe answer that question that Delani posed him a little bit earlier. To everyone participating, thank you so much. Please share your comments online. Have a wonderful evening further. And remember, every Wednesday night, same time, same place.
Looking forward to the Map Club in Cape Town.
Today, for me, today for you, today for each of us, is an opportunity and an invitation to step into a world of abundance where your life matters, where your vision makes a difference, where the world will know that once upon a time in the past there was a man or a woman who rose to the calling of God in their life and made the impact that they were designed to make. And you have that ability. Just die to self, surrender to Him, and become significant. I couldn't be more excited for you. I could not be more excited about the future, because every person that you equip to take that step of putting a plan together for their life, a plan that is aligned with the desires of their heart, those people, those children, young and old, are going to come alive, and they're going to cause a ripple that goes through time that impacts the lives of others. Make the choice today to live a life of significance.